In Perspective, episode 104.
Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to In Perspective. I am Bob Branco. Good to be on, as always. And, of course, it's good to have with me my good friend and co-host, Al Hensel, with me today. How are you, Al?
I'm doing great, Bob, and I hope you are as well.
I am. Thank you very much. I would like at this time to do a couple of things. First, I want to thank everybody for making it possible for In Perspective to be aired on the media outlets that we have. Thank you, everybody, especially to 195 The Globe, our newest outlet. Thank you, Dennis R. Sumlin, who handles the talk side of 195 The Globe. Thank you for putting us on the air weekly. Thank you very much. And also thank you to Jacqueline Sylvia of JS Web Solutions, who puts our shows up on my website and archives them for us. If you want to find archived shows of In Perspective, just go to brancoevents.com, arrow down until you see Branco Events Podcasts, click on that, and you will find our In Perspective shows archived from latest to earliest. And I know, Al, you usually say something at this point.
Merci, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm sure she was waiting for that, too. And one more thing, because we have the new outlets, we don't know the people who are listening for the most part on those outlets. So let me give out my email address in case anybody wants to write to us at In Perspective in regards to what we talk about and who we talk to. Our email address is branco182@verizon.net. That's Branco, B-R-A-N-C-O, 182@verizon.net. We have today somebody that's been on our show 2 other times. He's back for a 3rd appearance because he is a busy young man. He's an author, Stephen Theberge. He's written 2 books in the past, The Mechi Message and The Mechi Maelstrom. We'll probably touch on those books briefly. He's also working on a 3rd book, which is well on the way, and I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about that. But without further ado, welcome to In Perspective again, Stephen.
Hey, Stephen.
Well, thanks. Hey, Al and Bob. Thanks again for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to
We appreciate you coming on, man. It's always a pleasure and a privilege.
It's always nice to promote our authors. I'm an author, too, as you know, and so I know what it's like to write books and hope to market them properly, and this is one venue where we do that with authors. So we'll do our best to promote your books as much as we can, Steve. Steve, you've been an author now, as far as I know, for about 3 years, maybe 4. Is that when you started your first book?
Officially published author since 2016. So, yeah, you're in March, so we were just going over 3 years. Yep.
For those of you who have not yet read The Mechi Message, let me explain a little bit about it. And, Steve, you can fill in the blanks if I miss something. As far as I'm concerned, The Mechi Message, which was Steve Theberge's first book, is about his life at a school, but at the same time, there are 2 forces going on in the subconscious mind, battling each other for the positive and negative experiences that he has. So we're looking at sci-fi forces battling for the reality. Am I that far off, Steve?
That would probably be a very good literary analysis for a college course, but I do understand where you're coming from because I do write at different levels. So if you're not a big sci-fi fan, you can still get something out of it. I believe that I don't care if you're writing a Western, romance. I believe in the characters make the story. So it's not just like any sci-fi story, any story, it's about the people who are aliens. Like you said, Bob, I think that's a very interesting take on it as far, like you said, subconscious, because in the first book I do a lot with the dreams and, the aliens, of course. So, yeah, it's a counter. And there's really 3 plots because you have the other character and the psychiatrist. So you definitely can look at it on different levels.
It's a very deep book, and you really have to have appreciation for all the factors that I just explained and that Steve just explained. And if you do, you'll really get the message of what he's trying to convey in that book. And in his sequel, The Mecha Maelstrom, which is sort of like a follow-up. It goes beyond your school days with the same plots in mind.
Yeah, it's a continuation. The second, it would be, we have discussed the autobiographical stuff in my life. I would say semi-autobiographical, because all I can say about that is people that really know me are going to know what parts are truth to me and what parts are embellishments. Of course, at the end is an alien connection to Andre. That's like, well, that's not Steve, that's sci-fi. So I will say about the second book, or other people have said it, is it moves a lot faster. Because I think in my first book, I was doing more of the School for the Blind thing. It wasn't, and if you went there, you're going to be, oh, that's great. But I kind of wanted to really move it fast. So there's all these elements in the second book, the sci-fi, I have all kinds of stuff going on. There's child abuse. There's something about the opiate crisis. There's all kinds of but it moves so fast. You get absorbed in the character that other people did, and was telling me, I like the way it moves so fast right along. I even have something in there about, because basically this alien was abused as a child, so she wants to come rule Earth with the vengeance that but part of that I kind of alluded to the elections that she had, we talk about the Russian influence. Well, what about alien influence, mind control, stuff like that? So it has a lot of facets, but again, it's the characters that bring the story to life.
Yes. Now, obviously, we've introduced the titles, and people may be sitting at home wondering, what's a Mechi? You say Mechi message. So could you explain how you came up with that term, Mechi?
Definitely. There's two races called the Metans and the Shennons. They're about 50,000 years ahead of us, evolutionary-wise. And they explored the galaxy together, and they discovered Earth. And we were the first planet they discovered that had humanoid life on it. So they kind of were fond of us. And by the 20th century, they were like, what can we do for these people? How can we help them out without, taking them over? And so Metans would be like the planet Mars, and Shennons are from where Earth would be if you look at it as our solar system. So they formed an alliance. They wanted to collaborate, because at first they were very warlike, kind of like we still are in a lot of ways, and they kind of made peace. But of course, they're 50,000 years ahead of us. So Mechi is the name of an alliance or a council. It's just kind of a collaboration, like how we're going to work together and settle our differences.
And those are the sci-fi characters that I was referring to.
And also Mechi were in the second book. Well, they were in the first book. They did an experiment to hybrids with like both races, because they said, well, maybe these hybrids will get the best out of both of our races. But as you'll see in the second book, it kind of backfired, because this Mechi rogue turned out kind of like had a bad temper, and there were other reasons for that too.
So, Steve, a question for me to add some clarity to people, especially because you did mention, or Bob mentioned, a pending third book coming out very soon. For trilogy lovers, I being very much one, if I'm interested in the plot initially, then I go for the second book, and I'm always all over the third one. And if it goes beyond 3, then I grab that one too. I was an avid reader of the Harry Potter series, which obviously went 7, right?
I love those.
Yeah.
Can you imagine J.K. Rowling can write so many.
And it just flowed too. She in and of herself is such an amazing story. But
handle to her. She's some. But yeah, so you wanted me to clarify that?
I did. What I wanted you to clarify, Steve, was these two races of people, the Metans and the, what did you call them, Shennons?
Shennons, yeah.
Okay. Were these two planets close together? Is that how they sort of formed an alliance?
You would compare it to Earth and Mars, basically.
Okay, good. So they were both from one solar system. Did you get into how many light years they were away from our solar
A
system?
little bit in the first book. I didn't want to get too much into it because I'm not enough of an astrologer. I mean, astronomer.
Yep.
Read horoscopes, but where I could say, I did say I think they were like 11 light years away in the first book.
Okay.
But I didn't want to get too much into it because with all this stuff now with this telescope, so I kind of didn't. But
all right, so I've got to ask this question, Steve. Have you mapped this out enough to determine whether the star that housed these two planets in its solar system, it wasn't a twin star, right? It was a single?
Yeah, it was almost like, I think they might have had more planets than us, two more planets than our solar system, but I kind of made it similar, but I didn't say it's in this part of the galaxy.
Okay, that's fine. Now, so is this star classified similarly as a G25 like our star?
Yeah, I had it kind of as a sun.
Okay, good.
The only reason they had life on Mars, I don't know if you read the first one, I know, is that they had more atmosphere so they could have warmer weather.
Good, gotcha. Perfect.
Earth and Mars combination.
Okay, good. So that's pretty much what I wanted to clarify. So these two find us, is that right, Steve? Or do we each find each other?
They found us in the Egyptian times, and like I said, us being the first, hey, this human-like life, they kind of grew fond of us, and now it is also another thing now with the two races in the second book is that they're coming at odds with different issues.
Gotcha. So do you determine whether we and the Mechi alliance were of the same exact genetic strain? Did we all evolve from the same seed, or is that not yet determined?
No, because the Metans are like shapeshifters, but I explained it. They actually control their cell structure, and the Shannons were more like psychic.
Okay.
They could read minds over the great distances, so that, and then they had the combination of the races, which kind of mentioned in the second book.
Yes. And that was sort of a failed thing. It kind of went off the rails, if you will, a little bit.
More or less, for the most part, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, well,
it's great.
Steve, let's get into your third book because that's the one that you're working on right now. Tell us about that one and how does that relate to the first two?
All right, so like I said, Andre is the main protagonist, which, he's kind of like me. I mean, he's visually impaired. I'll say that. I'll leave it at that. Like I said, people that know me are going to know what parts of it are me and what parts of it, So the third book, in the second book, without giving too much away, these rogues, the ones that are a combination of Metin and Shannon, Metsi, they're also Mechi Alliance, but there's Metsis, the combination of Metins and Shannons. Some of them have really bad tempers. Okay, so this, I guess you could call it either alien queen, wannabe, a ruler of Earth, saying, I'm going to leave. And 4,000 of these other crossbreeds, whatever you want to call them, hybrids, it's probably a nicer way of putting it, go with her, but they're like, we just want an opportunity to leave the planet. So part of the maelstrom, which is basically the definition, is like a storm or tempest. It's a lot of emotional, as Leonard describes it in the book, in the synopsis, maelstrom of emotions, which it really is what it is. So the people on the Metamo and Shenna, so those are the planets they came from, are kind of pursuing them because they're like, these people are trying to break away from our government. So to make a long story short, before they get caught, like I said, without giving away the ending too much, they flee to another planet. So my third book starts 50,000 years later when they evolved more and they have the ability to time travel. They actually evolved where they can do lucid dreaming and go into time travel. And they say, well, let's see, maybe, what if we went back into time and prevented that person from going to Earth? So I have a few time travel scenarios. And it's kind of early on in the book. like 22,000 words, chapter 15. It's a rough draft, but I put some stuff out there to have people saying I'm really getting on my mark with this, like comparing the first book with people like, it's not bad. And then the second book say bang, 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 moves right along. And now it's like, I'm just getting to the point where my writing is getting much sharper and more concise, so I don't have to say as much. But I don't want it to be a short story either. So that's the basic premise of the third book.
What is the title of your third book?
The Metsy ? I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
It's got to be Metsy something. And I do intend, although you know how writers are, and who knows what the future will be, I really intend it to be the trilogy final. But, that's what I said in the first book. I said, I don't know if I want to write again. And once that bug hits you, though.
Yeah, you can't remove it. You mentioned Leonore. I just want to give a plug to DLD Books, because DLD Books, they help a lot of people. They help me. They help you. They help many, many other people that I know who are becoming really good authors. And one thing about DLD Books, they're very affordable. They edit for you. They proofread for you. They format. They help lay out the covers of the books. They put the books on different sites for you. They are a very good, reputable, professional outfit. And without the help of DLD Books, sure, we know how to write. That's not what I mean. But they make sure that everything that we do is professionally done for the public to buy, for the public to see. And I can't say enough about DLD Books, Leonore and David Dvorkin.
Yeah, I would echo that. And also, I've done some research, and you could pay easily 3 or 4 times what they charge and not get anywhere near half as much.
Oh, absolutely. I remember one time before I wrote my first book, or I should say before I released my first book, I was using a company called Author House, which I'm glad I left them, frankly. This was before I knew Leonore. They were offering me a marketing package where they said that they would talk to 500 members of the press nationwide for me and all that, but I would have to spend nearly $1,000. I don't have $1,000. So that was out the window.
Just to also further plug David and Leonore, firsthand experience watching Bob go through the pains of trying to publish Perkins' Home Away from Home. Now, Bob, I don't know if was it Author House who gave you all this liability sort of backlash in you wanting to publish, pretty close to, the right names of places, of people, so that people who are reading your book could understand where you were coming from? Or is that a totally different publishing entity?
I'll tell you exactly what they wanted me to do. I think it was Author House. Don't quote me on that, but
Okay.
It was definitely not DLD Books. It was,
Right.
It was another company. Okay. I introduced my book to them. My book was called My Home Away from Home, Life at Perkins School for the Blind. They wanted me to change the name of the school, change the name of the location, change the name of almost everything that I said, because they were afraid of a lawsuit. So my response was, pretty much in a nutshell, if you won't let me tell my story the way I want, then you're fired.
Good.
And I don't know how I found the Dvorkins. I think I've been asked that question several times.
Yeah.
I don't remember how I found them. Steve, I know that I introduced them to you.
Yeah, you did. I'm just, like I say, I'm blessed because when they asked me on the radio a little while back, said, what took you so long? I said, finding a publisher more than anything, because the book was pretty much, I fixed it before the Dvorkins, but I was like, well, what do I do now? And there's so many scams out there. It's so hard to trust people, because my father wrote books years ago, way before the internet. It was just so hard to find reputable publishers. They'll tell you what you want to hear, and especially now with the online stuff, I've almost fallen for. There's all these kinds of groups online. They'll publish and promote your book. You don't even know if they're going to do it, but they give you all the right answers. Well, we do 1,000 people a month, but they're quality people. And I pin the nuts. How do I know you get those people? And say, well, you don't really, but you can trust us. I said, yeah, Did you do the Harry Potter books? Then I'll be on board. You know.
And the one thing about self-published books, which is what Leonore and David
Yep.
do for you, they're not a professional publishing company as far as
No, but
real publishing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're professional, but they are into self-publishing.
Yeah,
Okay, and you can pretty much tell your story the way you want to tell it when you self-publish, as opposed to if you regularly publish.
Yeah, the tradition. Yeah, because some of the agents will say they change the story so much. It's like I would almost welcome a lawsuit because the publicity would be like, so XYZ sues starving blind artist. I mean, are you serious? That would not be good PR.
Well, I think the one thing that you and I realized when we were writing our book, Steve, is I know in your book and in my book about the School for the Blind, we changed a lot of people's names. We did that automatically because we know how it is.
Well, you know what's funny about that you mention it? And like I said, it's about people that know me, because I actually, in all my books, I use first names and sometimes I use an initial. And my sister was like, "You're going to get sued." I said, half the people are dead, half the people are too old. And it's like, I don't think so. And then I asked Leonard, I said, you know how they used to say any references to what events and places are? She said, don't worry about it.
Yeah, but you changed their names. So
well, I omitted enough where it's, I didn't use last names, obviously, but I had only people that know me are like, oh yeah, that was great. But like my sister's like, oh, you shouldn't have said that. That's a lot of secrets. So not really. That's because you know me and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't know me, you're not going to know.
Yeah, it's true. Would you like to talk to a caller, Steve?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, there is a caller on the line. I'm going to have that person unmute by hitting 4*, and then they'll get to talk to you. Hello, caller. You're on the air with Stephen Theberge. I heard them check in at the beginning of our show. That's how I know they're on the line. I don't think they hung up. Or maybe they did.
Me?
Hi.
Hello.
Is that Chad Grover?
Over here. Hi, nice to meet you, Chad.
Chad from Corning, New York. What can I do for you?
Really, I didn't have any questions. But it sounds interesting about your books and topics there you're speaking about.
Yeah.
Sure, that's great.
Chad, have you read either of Steve's first two publications?
I have not.
Okay, and are you a science fiction reader at all?
Not really, no.
Well, this might be a great time to dabble, perhaps, if if you're willing. Steve's got quite a limitless imagination, and hopefully you'll find the reading of either or both of his books as fascinating as you're finding the discussion.
I want to write down the name. What's his complete name again?
Yes, Steve, why don't you give us all of your information where folks can get his book?
Do you have online access?
Chad, do you have internet, he's asking?
I use my internet at work, but not at home.
Oh, okay. I don't know how you would order it unless you, I can give you the names. Do you have Bard? NLS?
Bookshare?
Yeah.
Well, you can get my first book on, it's on Bookshare. Okay, I'll give you the one, I know that would be the easiest for you on Bard to get my first book.
All right.
Can you have something to take it down?
Yeah.
Okay, it's DBC.
All right.
11571.
DBC 11571.
And Steve, give us the title and the spelling of your name as well.
Yeah. Okay. The first book is called The Metsche, METSCHE. Message.
All right.
The Metsche Message.
Okay. All right.
And with the DB spell, I'll give you my name anyway. My first name is Stephen, Stephen. Or Stefan, as some of the
It's a French way.
Yeah. T-H-E, T as in Tom, H-E, B as in boy, E-R-G-E.
Okay, got it.
And for anyone else out there, if you Google Metchi Steven Thiebaert, I think you'll come up with them, but I'll give you my website at some point.
I was going to ask you to give out your website that Leonore made for you.
Yeah, that's DLD, Delta Lima Delta books.com/STEPHENTHEBERGE. So it's basically dldbooks.com/ my first and last name. There's no spaces or anything there.
And it lists all the buying sites as well.
Yeah, it does. It has everything. It has, I think it even has the Bookshare. I'm not sure about the second one, but they're both on Bookshare. So if you put my name in Bookshare, I don't know how much, I guess we're going to have a lot of listeners or enough. You can put my name in or Metchi, probably. They're both on Bookshare. The first one's on Bard. The second one will be on Bard. I'm assuming. Well, I'm not going to assume anything, but hopefully by the fall or at least winter.
It's on Kindle, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we're on Kindle. Yeah, if you go to those buying sites, the dldbooks.com/Steven Thiebaert, yeah, you will. A lot of people do have the Kindle. I've actually checked it out on Kindle Reader. Alexa can read it. When you buy Kindle books, Alexa can actually read them, and she's actually not a bad reader, which I was surprised.
Yeah, she's very clear. And folks, I'm looking at them right now on Amazon. I'm an avid shopper, and they're both available at Kindle. Both the Metchi Message and the Metchi Maelstrom. They're both available on Kindle.
Yep.
And for a very small price as well. If a person can afford $2.95, they're golden. $2.99. I'm sorry. Yep.
Now, Steve, a lot of our listeners are blind, and so I want to address something that happened recently, and I wondered if this was resolved. There was an issue recently about accessibility on Amazon, making it hard for authors and people who want to buy the books to buy them, using blind-friendly methods, for lack of better terms here.
I think that's a matter of, I have had no problems on Amazon's, on the iPhone. It's a little harder on the PC, but I haven't had any major problems. My biggest problem, I want to bring that up, is ordering our own copies of our own books is not accessible.
That's what I meant.
Oh, I thought, yeah, okay. That, I have brought that to Laney Feingold. I ran it by before I got out of there. I ran it by John Bosco, and it seems like no one wants to touch it. I don't know why. Or maybe they're working on it and it's going to take time, but at the last check about a couple of weeks ago, I could not order my own books on KDP, but a regular blind person on, if you're not a blind author, you can order those on the Kindle site or the Amazon, but yeah, that is a problem we're having as authors.
Well, what if you ordered your own books from the Kindle site?
I would pay more, though.
Because you're the author, and they would recognize that right away when you tried to...
No, because you can buy books as gifts to people, but I guess you could wait for I guess you could get the money back on the other side. Because, yeah, I've actually promoted my book by giving some copies away, and you get the money back on the other side, but it's... You're still spending more money, though. Because when you order print books, I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
If I ordered my print book, I would still be spending more than I would on the author's site. I would get the refund back, the commission, but I would still be spending more because I don't know why, but yeah.
All right. Well, I know that we all like to help one another as authors. Those of you out there who receive Consumer Vision magazine know that I have a section in there called Author's Corner, where Leonore summarizes all the updates for her author clients, what they're doing, what they've done, what they're going to do. And I think that as I said, being an author is easy when you know how to write. That's the easy part. It's afterwards, the promoting and the marketing. I mean, I've done it. I've been there, done that. I remember one time I went to a library book signing when I was the only one there. It was horrible, but it was scheduled, and so I went. They had signs posted. I sat there for nearly a half an hour with no customers.
Wow, that can be disheartening.
I mean, doing these types of things are crapshoots sometimes. You got to really, you know. And then, of course, some authors are more successful than others. I've heard about authors, especially some that Leonore has, that all they really have to do in some cases is snap their fingers. I mean, there's one client out there who has a movie coming up as a result of her book.
Yeah, that's great.
But then again, when you consider the topic she talked about, it's a wonder. You know.
Steve, I have a question for you. Given that you are still in search of completing the title for your third publication, have you ever considered throwing the suggestion out there for readers and fans to sort of make suggestions about a title name as a kind of pre-promotion for the book?
Yeah, I'm trying to. The problem is my sales. You know, I do get sales, but it's a trickle. But I really don't know who they are because they're through the Kindle. You know what I'm saying? I have put stuff out on like science fiction fan club, sites and stuff. So it might be an idea, and I do promote on those sites. There's like, you know, a lot of people, and it's definitely a thought.
How about the How about the Facebook groups that you belong to?
Yeah, that's what I am on. But I'm on a lot of different author promo groups. But now specifically, I found a sci-fi group, which is really good to bounce ideas off of. So yeah, it's.
I would also classify, Steve. I'm not sure if you peg it this way or not, but based on your first two books, I've given them perfunctory looks. I haven't delved into them yet because I know once I do, I'm not going to put them down. But my thought is science fiction / fantasy. I'm almost thinking that you could combine either or genre.
Bookshare has a lot of different categories. I mean, disability, you know, because it's the blind character, and
right.
A lot of different angles. And that would even be just for the sake of, you know, a lot of visually, the blind people are going to relate to the characters in the book, or at least the main character.
Sure. Do you know how they're classified genre-wise under Bard?
DBC, I would check it out. I don't remember.
Yeah, I can check. I'll check later. But I'm almost thinking that they may also classify those under disability, fantasy, science fiction.
They definitely have disability. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, that's easy enough to find out, and hopefully some folks will go there and check it out too. And you know, if they're curious about the classification of genre as I am, maybe that'll be an inducement to jump in.
That was my whole point. I mean, yeah, I'm not denying science fiction, but like Bob was saying, it has different levels. I mean, you could even call it, I never thought of it, psychological.
Sure, fiction, yeah.
Drama, because there is that part, like Bob was saying, especially in the first book, with the stuff in the mind, and even more so in the second group, because in the second book, because I do stuff with alien mind control, but it's more just controlling of different aspects of our lives. I mean, you could look at it that way.
Okay, good.
In the second book, I touch on, you know, like I said, abuse, the opiate crisis, drug addiction. It's something there for everyone.
So, Steve, that's a great seg. I wanted to ask you this: how would you say? How do I ask this question? How does the telling, unfolding of each book mimic how you feel about that period of time that you're writing about? Is there a kind of conscious effort to parallel your actual plot lines with kind of some of the current events?
Point, yeah. I mean, I think they always say write what you know. I mean, I'm not sure if you had any author. I mean, Harry Potter, let's say, she would probably tell you, this. You can tell she writes from something. I don't think it's always conscious. I mean, I couldn't just do like science fiction straight like.
Right.
But even they wrote from some of the greatest sci-fi authors. Time and Again by Philip K. Dick. It reads like a historical fiction because
Gotcha.
It goes back in time and the characters are laid out. So he's probably writing from just studying the time period.
And L. Ron Hubbard is probably one of the greatest science fiction satirists I've ever read.
Yeah, that's interesting to know. I never really.
Yeah, and I don't ascribe, by the way, folks, I don't ascribe to Scientology, which he was the architect of. I think I don't. But I love some of his books. They're like very satirical of the times, and they move along very quickly. So they're totally different from what one would try to pin on him as, the notion of Scientology and all of its baggage. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, Steve, again, the website, and then I want to see if we do have time to talk about a couple of other things. So before we do, I just want to give out that website, which I think most people would be most familiar with. They'll find out as much as possible, and that would be www.dldbooks.com/Stephen Theberge/ and you'll find information about the Metchi message, the Metchi Maelstrom, and hopefully soon the Metchi whatever it's going to be. We'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
And of course, all the buying sites are listed.
They have the first book first, so you go down, it's like you really probably should read them in order. But because that's how I push the second one.
Absolutely, sure.
Here. And that makes them great. The first, I did get a couple hits on when I pushed the second one out. Some people actually bought both. Some people bought the first one. So it's like they're not flooding in, but I think you can agree with me, Bobby. You said your sales are on a trickle. It's selling, but to get that lucky certain review, that's what it takes.
It all depends on the topic and the market. Yeah. And how you promote it. And I hate to use this word in this conversation because it shouldn't matter, but it does. Money, affordability.
It's all money. I mean, it's very, like the Harry Potter, if she didn't come across the right people, and there's luck, a lot of luck too. I mean, sometimes you just get lucky and somebody said, I'm going to back you, and got it. And that's 7 books. And I actually just writing it under a pseudonym and writing other stuff. I don't know if that's true or not, but I might be thinking of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
No, Stephen King is writing as somebody else. It's like, why does he have to write as a pseudonym?
A lot of people use
it's often, Steve, it's often contractual. Yeah, Richard Bachman, he wrote under him for a few of his early books, but from what I heard, it was contractual.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not big enough to worry about the pseudonyms because I was asking Leonard. I said that would be kind of cool. She said, yeah, but it's not going to do you any good. You're not well known, so it's just going to probably confuse.
Oh, she has at least one client that's using a pseudonym right now.
Oh, cool.
I think her name is Leonore. Correct me if I make a mistake. I think it's J.T. Hart. That's not her real name. So there are people who use pseudonyms if they want to. I mean, obviously the one that comes to mind right away would be Mark Twain. That was a pseudonym. His real name is Samuel Clemens.
Right.
I believe.
Bob, before you go on to another subject, I wanted to complete my plug for DLD Books, the Dvorkins themselves, and we've had them on too, by the way, folks, in an earlier show. Perhaps you could go and look for it in the archives on Bob's website. But just to plug the Dvorkins, Bob, firsthand from your experiences that you told to me, The Dvorkins are people who let you, as authors and prospective authors, do your thing, and they'll edit for you. They're expert and professional at everything they do, but they give you every iota of freedom of expression. So, if you're worried about legalities, if you're worried about scams out there, don't worry. Just go to DLD Books, and if you need guidance, go to Steve or Bob.
Yeah, and like you said, Al, it's both of them. I mean, because the first cover, it's like, I don't know how to design a cover. My site's not that great anyway. But the second cover, we collaborated. So, well, I want a cat in there, and blah, blah, blah. We was going to be a black cat. I said, and like when we were doing the editing, she said black cat. I said, no, just say cat. But we have a conversation, and 99.9 of the times when Leonor does an edit, I agree. I might ask questions, and she'll explain it. And I went through like my first book and the second one. Like I read mine and I read hers, and it's like it made sense to me. But like you said, Al, she kept your voice. She didn't change it so much where it's like, that's not me writing.
Right.
I was going to say, the one thing that Leonor does when she edits, whether she edits a lot for a client or just a little bit for a client, when you read it back, it's almost like she knows how to speak your language. Yeah. She doesn't change your expressions and the way you write. It's not like it's another person taking your place once she's finished. It is still you, and it is still how you write things and how you say things. She makes sure that she continues to conform to your own personality.
She'll either take something out or elaborate on something. Like in my first book, I said she removed something, but it was I said, that's such a minor thing. It doesn't have to be there. And in the second book, she did more writing up something, because I said, oh yeah, it's more clear. Like she'd ask me questions like, well, what exists? She has a way of making you think as a writer. It's like, you know what you're talking about, and she said, I suggest this, and say, yeah, she's sharp, man. It's just a natural thing to her.
And she's read it all, because you'd be amazed at some of the things that she's had to edit. I'm sure she's had to edit books with swears in them and all that. I'm sure she has. But anyhow, Steve, good luck with your books. I'm sure that you try your best like everybody else does. It's just a matter of luck a lot of times. One thing that I must say, and I'm going to quote Leonor here because she said it to me, and I don't know if I can use the exact wording, but I'll be as close as I can. She said, don't expect to make a living out of being an author. And I think that's important. Some people might think that they expect to, and so that when they don't have too many sales, they get very disappointed. Do not expect to make a living out of being an author. It doesn't work that way.
I would say if there's any authors listening, you're doing it for, of course I don't even necessarily want a bestseller, because I don't know if I want to hide away, like be seen in public. Oh, this Stephen Thierer is a great writer. I don't want that much. I'd love a lot of sales, but really, my second book, I was, like you said, you get disappointed, but it's like, I'm at the point where I just love writing. And of course I want to sell, but if you're a real author, you're going to do it because you like doing it. And some of these scams are like, well, you got to market it. You got to write to your market. It's like, I can write from my heart. And whoever has my heart will be my market. That's how I look at it.
Well, and so Leonor is what she's saying is so wisdomatic. Pardon the makeup of a word here, but because Steve and Bob, and I'm sure you have experienced this firsthand, that kind of guidance and wisdom keeps authors' passion flowing as intensely as possible. Because if somebody comes in disillusioned, okay, I'm going to write what I would consider a great, from a great idea, a great plot, and I'm going to get that book out there, I'm just naturally going to expect to make a great deal of money. And then if the expectation is overblown and they end up not, it could possibly run the gamut of killing their passion. And I think that's what Leonore does by keeping things in realistic perspective. That way, if your money making prospects are low, that the passion will continue to flow. And then one never knows later on, Steve. You guys mentioned about timing, about getting lucky and stuff. Well, timing of a book too, I find, has so much to do with it as well. So just keep on plugging, folks out there. Keep on plugging. Get your passions flowing, and don't expect to make $1 million or whatever. Just keep flowing and just keep putting it out there, and it may click for you.
That's a good point out, because I was just thinking that you can't, like somebody said, that's great writing, and you can't let that get to your head. Oh, it's my bestseller. And one thing about being an author is you either think, some say, you're a great writer, so you think, oh, yeah, that's it, I'm going to have a next bestseller. Or you're like so self-critical, you think you're crap. But you're just going to write, and it sounds so corny, you write what you know. I mean, I don't know aliens, but I grew up on sci-fi. I like to use my imagination. I like to make people think.
One thing that I always get mystified by or get bothered by a lot of times when I write or when I do promoting of any kind, one of the questions that I get a lot is, what is your target audience? Now, I'd like to think that if I'm doing proper marketing or proper promoting or proper publishing, I would like to think that my target audience is everybody. The way I feel is, if I have to limit my target, that means I'm not going to target some people. So I don't know why we are asked what our target audiences are.
The traditional publishers. So you're writing. Yeah, I'm writing. But it's like my book. Like my cousins and aunts, they had no interest in sci-fi, but it's a great story, And even my cousin said, "Yeah, it was really interesting with the aliens, but it was still a great story because, like I said, it's about the characters. It's not just because, because you say sci-fi and someone's not going to I'm not going to read it. But there's so much stuff. It's like saying it's a Western. There's bad Westerns and good Westerns. I hope I'm decent enough for people to buy the second and third book. Like I said, I don't expect, like Al said, we don't expect bestseller, but this target audience,
Yeah,
nowadays they're doing that, like it never used to be. I mean, it is the same kind of sci-fi / fantasy. I mean, mine is both. I mean, because I do have sci-fi stuff, like when I talk about the development, the chromas, the world and how they develop. But yeah, it's interesting how the marketing nowadays is kind of like //. It's kind of getting to that point where you said, Bob, everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
So I'm just imagining, folks. Robert Ludlum starts off probably in the mid-late 60s, writing from what he knows, Steve, to coin your concept there, to enhance your concept. And what he knows, obviously, is thriller / spy novel / suspense. And so he starts writing to that, and he becomes one of the few that becomes extremely successful at what he does. And his target audience, gents, comes to him, right? So you guys, I'm sure he didn't stop and think, gee, on his first book or even his second or third book, what's my target audience? He doesn't know. He's writing what he knows. And he gets his whole, system in place and refined. And before you know it, his target audience finds him. And so I think every author is going to experience the same thing at some point.
Yeah.
I agree. As an author myself, I agree.
Yeah.
When I go to book signings, it's not like I'm going there and I'm going to say, well, gee, let me see who my target audience is over here and who isn't. Whoever walks in that door is going to be my target audience.
Yeah.
And whether they're 80 years old or 10 years old or a male, a female, or a transgender or an Afro-American or a Hispanic or a European or a Jew or a Gentile, don't matter. Okay? They walk in the door, they want to sign my book, they want to buy my book. Very good.
I have advice for any author / writers, whatever you want to call yourself. I will read almost anything. I mean, I don't just read sci-fi. That would probably be like my go-to, but I'll read a lot of different genres. There's been books I've read, it's like, I'm not going to enjoy that. And there's books that I thought I would enjoy, and I said, that's no good. So it's just a matter of saying, have an open mind, and say, I'll read Western if I never read one. Like when I was before I did book clubs, I was like, this doesn't sound, but that's because I had a preconception. It's like, and you read, it's like I couldn't put it down. Like Al was saying, sometimes this books is, like Harry Potter, I really never thought, I mean, I knew the basic concepts, kids in school and then witches and wizards, it's nice, but I really enjoy them.
This was a good segue, Steve. You mentioned book club. I know that you go to a book club monthly that Perkins School provides for authors, and I think that's great, by the way, that their staff, their library staff, runs this club so that you and others can go and get recommendations or give recommendations for books. I think that's a nice little community that they formed for people like yourself and me and others who are authors or people who simply just want to read something.
Well, I just want to read because before I really started writing the final, I just read, of course, a lot of sci-fi, but I just, if you see what different kind of writing is out there, because you can't, I did creative writing in college, but they didn't teach me how to write. They taught me, we did more reading of what was out there than, because you can't, it's like a musician. Yeah, you can teach them music, but if they don't have a natural talent, they can go to school all their life. It's like voice. If you have that natural talent to sing, voice lessons are going to be great. But some people just don't have that talent to sing. You could send them to voice lessons the rest of their life. It's anything like that. It's like sports. If you want to bring up, some people just have a knack. Yeah, you teach and you can. So, and I say, if you're an author, just write it, run it by different people, and get some kind of consensus.
So, Steve, what was it? And I should have asked you this question at the outset, but there's time for me to ask it now.
Yep.
What possessed you to think of the plot for the Mechi Message? Because that was your first book. What was it that you thought about that made you decide to do this?
I had written science fiction short stories, actually, one of them in college. So I think the Shannons were in college, and after the Mettons, I was very young at Perkins, so it was very undeveloped. I don't even have original drafts, but so I was like, well, then I said, well, let's just write an autobiography about blind school. And then I don't know how just one day said, why not combine them into one story? And nothing against autobiographies about blind schools and stuff, vision rehabilitation centers, but I was like, it's great, these stories are great, but it kind of, and I wasn't thinking about the market so much, but I said, it's going to have a very limited audience as far as, I mean, maybe some sighted people would be interested in what's going on. But actually someone did tell me that about my first book. They said, it really gave me insight into what it's like to be blind and visually impaired. So I basically didn't want to just be a sci-fi story about two planets, and those two races weren't even together at first. So I kind of just said, why not combine it into one story?
So, Steve, just for clarification, the Mechi ? Will that take place 50,000 years from now?
Well, in a sense, yeah, but most of the story is going to be them second guessing, like, well, let's see that they went to Earth. Maybe we should stop. I have like a few scenarios that work out. So yeah, it starts 50,000 years in the future.
And then time travels back and forth, right, to correct the problem.
Like we're gonna stop this. The stuff that happened in the first two books, or some of the stuff.
Got it.
What's the result of that meddling?
Right. Okay. Good.
And if you know anything about time travel, you probably can have some good guesses of what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'll
kind
tell you
of,
what
sort of. Yeah, I do. I think.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do
Though
right
you
now.
you may surprise me, Steve Areno. We'll see. Yeah.
We
Oh,
have.
I'm sure I will. The second book was a surprise to everyone, especially how it ended with the Andre character. It's like that was definitely okay.
Okay, good.
Here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to use In Perspective as sort of a contest. We have potentially 8,000 to 10,000 listeners right now. If you're talking about when I post up the links to my lists and to my Facebook groups and people listening on the internet radio stations and all that. Steve,
Get stage fright, isn't it?
well,
No, it shouldn't be, Steve.
here's what I would like to do for you, Steve. You don't have a title for your third book. Hopefully people have listened to you this past hour. They know what you're up against. I'm going to have our listeners email me with that answer to the question mark. If you know how Steve can complete the third title of his third book for the trilogy, the Mechi question mark, how should he finish the trilogy? Email us here at In Perspective at Branko182@Verizon.net with your recommended fill-in for that title. We're going to have a little game here. Maybe Steve might like your suggestion. Maybe he won't. But
I'll tell you what, though. If I decide on somebody, they will be credited in the third book for it.
Awesome.
there you go. You heard that
Awesome.
from the author. If he likes your idea, he will give you honorable mention in the third book. So think about this seriously, folks. If you have a word to finish the title of his third book, send it to Branko182@Verizon.net. You
And
never know. You might be a winner.
Here's a little hint, too, folks. Read the first two books before you decide on the third, as a suggestion.
Yeah, that would help.
It would probably
Yeah.
help if you read the first two books.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because then I'll know if you read it. I was like, that was very clever.
Exactly. And guess what, Steve? We are out of time.
All righty. Thanks
So-
for having me.
Yeah,
Oh,
Steve,
thank you
for coming on. We hope you return more times as well. We really enjoyed talking to you, and good luck on your third release.
I thought you said 3 times. I forgot about the META. Yeah.
Yep, this is your third appearance.
Yep.
Third appearance, the third book coming out. Here we go.
Well, good luck, Steve. We hope it's very successful.
All right.
Thanks.
Good. And everybody, we hope you have a great week. We hope to hear you back again next week. Go safe, travel safe with God and His infinite blessings, and we'll talk to you soon.